So it gives me a lot of pleasure. I'm very lucky to be able to stand up here and introduce folks. Bea Bruske was elected as the CLC president at the CLC's 29th Constitutional Convention in June 2021. Over the past 3 decades, Bea has served workers and families as an activist, a workers' advocate, a negotiator, a community organizer, and a union labor leader. Bea's passion for the rights of working people was ignited in 1987 when she and her UFCW Local 832 co-workers held the line strong for 125 days to achieve a fair contract at the West Fair grocery chain in Manitoba. Over the next 7 years, Bea took on roles as a shop steward, health and safety committee member, and was elected by her fellow members as a vice president of the local's executive board. In 1994, Bea was hired as a full-time union representative and later full-time negotiator. Over 2 decades, she serviced and bargained for tens of thousands of Local 832 members in the healthcare, food production, retail, nonprofit, and security sectors. In 2011, Bea was elected UFCW Local 832 Secretary-Treasurer. In her role as Secretary-Treasurer, Bea was responsible for administering the largest private sector local union in Manitoba with 20,000 members. She also continued as a negotiator, bargaining contracts with some of Canada's largest cross-country employers. It was at that point that I met Bea in Vancouver, almost 10 years ago now. Nationally, Bea is a vice president of the UFCW Canada National Council, which sets the strategic direction for the National Union and its more than 250,000 members across the country. In addition, Bea served on the UFCW Canada National Council, Human Rights, Equity and Diversity Committee, as a trustee on a number of health and welfare trust funds, served as trustee on the Manitoba Council of Healthcare Union, HEPP, Health Employer Pension Plan, 3 terms on the Manitoba Federation of Labour Executive Board, as well as an employee representative to the Manitoba Labour Board from 2007 to 2018. Bea was also a member of the Executive Board of the Manitoba NDP and is a graduate of the University of Manitoba in Labour Studies. Welcome, Bea.
I'm short. I own it. It's okay. Thank you so much, David.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I want to really thank David and Lori for the invitation and to congratulate them and all of your incoming officers for the next term on the great job that they're doing for you and that they're going to be continuing to do. It's an absolute pleasure to be here speaking with you today, and I see that it's a very engaged group. You guys are all getting up to the mics and speaking. I love seeing that. I really appreciate that. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Bea Bruske, and I'm your new president of the Canadian Labour Congress. Thank you. It's been an absolute whirlwind since my team and I were elected, and I'm so proud of my team. My team is made up of Lily Chang, Siobhan Vipont, and of course Larry Russo, who's joined our team, and we're working really well together, and I'm really proud to be working with them. The Congress brings together millions of workers right across Canada, and I'm very excited that this team is going to be leading to build the labor movement to be ready to rise to the challenges that are ahead of us, and we have so many of them, my friends. So let me tell you a little bit about where I come from. I like to say that my job is kicking ass for the working class. Thank you so much. My first job, as David mentioned, was as a grocery store clerk in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I started there, like many of us do, after school and on weekends, stocking shelves, bagging groceries. That was my very first experience as a worker. And I knew that I was making more than minimum wage because I was part of a union. And it's there that I walked my very first picket line way back in 1987. That makes me feel like 100 years old, but it was back in 1987 for 125 days. But that taught me the power of solidarity and what working people can accomplish when we work together in a union. And it's there that I became a shop steward and got involved in the greater labor movement. And I saw what we can achieve when we work together for a common cause. And like so many of us in Canada, I'm an immigrant. My family moved here when I was 12 years old. To us, Canada is a place of hope and possibility. But I can also see how many people are being left behind. And I can see how much work we have left to do to build the communities where every single one can share fairly in the opportunities that Canada has to offer. And I know that working together, we can build tremendous things. And that's why I'm very excited to be leading the labor movement at this pivotal moment. And I'm also very excited that your president, David Black, is joining us on the CLC Executive Committee, not just on the Canadian Council where all of the unions sit, but also as part of the integral piece of the Executive Committee who's going to be giving me advice and making sure that I'm moving in the right direction. So thank you for taking that on, David. Yes, it is extra work, so we should definitely be clapping. During this election, I had the opportunity to visit BC, and it's so beautiful. Who needs an excuse to come and visit you folks? But I had the opportunity to canvass with some of your incredible candidates, including Lisa Marie Barron, Laurel Collins, and of course Benita Zarillo, who are all going to Ottawa, 2 of them newbies to Ottawa. So it was an absolute privilege to canvass beside them and to talk about voter issues and issues that matter to workers in BC, but also right across Canada. I absolutely love their engagement and their energy and their commitment. They will be such important voices for us, representing their constituents and putting workers and families at the heart of what Parliament does. And my friends, when the snap election was called, as we heard earlier during your political report back in August, we at the CLC, we rolled up our sleeves and we got to work having an impact on the campaign. And of course, that's what we as union organizers all do best. We knocked on doors, we made phone calls, we sent out thousands of text messages. I honestly can't remember a Canadian election where politicians focused more on working people, where party leaders spent more time asking for our votes. And some of the parties, quite frankly, that went after our votes with policies that seemed written by giant corporations like Uber. Yes, I'm talking about Aaron O'Toole's Conservative Party trying to, make a second-class kind of tier of workers by some of his proposals that he put forward. Now that the election is over, the hard work is just getting started. The new federal cabinet ministers were just appointed, and we look forward to working with the Prime Minister and the cabinet, pressing them on the really important issues. In fact, as soon as I'm done on stage here, I have to apologize. I have to sneak out because I have a meeting with the Labour Minister, Seamus O'Regan, and I can't wait to start holding his feet to the fire on the promises that they made. Make no mistake, we will be tireless in engaging this new Parliament so that members of Parliament never forget the everyday people who put them there. I want to congratulate MoveUP on the great work that you've done to end the sexual orientation-based restrictions on blood and plasma donations. Thank you so much for all of your hard work. And as a result of that, the Canadian Blood Services is finally moving towards ending this discriminatory practice. You've been leaders in this, and I really applaud that. And I don't have to tell you that we're still living in a time of unprecedented upheaval. We are still dealing with the worst public health crisis. We're still dealing with the worst economy since the Great Depression. And we know that frontline workers right across the system have stepped up. And the pandemic has revealed some very serious inequities in our communities and very dangerous cracks in our social safety net. And that's why the most recent federal election cannot lead to a status quo parliament, even though the seat count may not have changed much. And so we need to make sure that the nature of our ambition meets the challenges facing us. So we in the labor movement have an incredible opportunity in the days and months ahead. We can use our influence to make real, substantial, and positive change happen, and to make sure that Parliament delivers a recovery with workers at the center of its plan. And that has to start with the federal government getting back to work and taking concrete action to help the 800,000 workers that they've just kicked off benefits as of this past weekend. They've cut them off emergency supports, and those folks have nowhere left to turn at this point in time. Many of those workplaces are not back to full force yet, and even if their workplaces are back, they're still working on much reduced hours. We need a recovery that strengthens public health care, including taking better care of our seniors by removing profit, finally, from long-term care. And let me be clear that a no-strings-attached approach to healthcare transfers is not going to cut it. It's not going to solve the problems that are plaguing our public health care system. Investments have to be tied to ending long-term care abuses, addressing nursing shortages and healthcare worker shortages in general, and improving access to primary care. And as chair of the Council of Federations, Premier Horgan can lead that change. I just want to take a moment here and tell you guys how amazing it is to be in a province where you have a majority NDP government. Coming from a province like Manitoba and spending a lot of time in Ontario, I am completely envious, quite frankly jealous of you folks, and I know you've worked hard to make that happen, but to have a government actually talking about implementing paid sick time, and of course we know we need 10 full days, right folks? We need 10 days. But to have a provincial government actually taking concrete action on worker issues is phenomenal, and they deserve our support, and we need to continue to support them, and we need to make sure that, you know, they get reelected again and again, and that good folks are running that are going to be bringing workers' voices forward at every level. So thank you for that. With the other premiers and the federal government, your premier has the ability to push on some of these issues, and we're going to be looking for his leadership and guidance on that. We know that Canadians don't want governments that are handed tens of billions in new funding and then misusing that as tax giveaways to their wealthy buddies. We want long-term care residents to be properly cared for and to live with dignity. We want healthcare workers, doctors, nurses in our communities. We want faster access to testing and diagnostics, and we want a recovery that stops talking about it but actually implements a national pharmacare program. Every single Canadian worker needs to be able to access pharmacare benefits and needs to be able to access their medicines. We need a recovery that replaces the millions of lost jobs with better ones, that permanently fixes our EI system so that workers are not left behind in tough times, and one that repairs our dangerous cracks in our social safety net. Because we don't know when that next crisis is going to hit. It could be another health-related one, and we know we're living in a climate crisis, and we know we must be ready. And that has to mean things like investing in education and in affordable housing and in a just transition for workers impacted by climate change. I know you folks have seen the impacts of climate change in your own province, and I don't have to remind us of the terrible events in Lytton, BC, and the very real reality that we are living through. So we need investments today so that we are ready for tomorrow's crises and we can tackle those. But we also need a pandemic recovery that allows women a way back into the labor force. The She Session is, quite frankly, not just a catchy phrase, it's a really terrifying reality. Women shouldered much of the burden that families had to carry. And I speak to parents all the time who tell me that having affordable childcare in their neighborhood is a huge burden, and it's a huge struggle, and it's a huge roadblock in order to participate fully in the labor market. And that's a problem that we need to fix. So many women have been pushed those economic sidelines, and so many others are toiling in frontline, often thankless type of jobs. And so many who are Black, racialized, Indigenous, or recent immigrants or migrants often face discrimination and intolerance on top of that, and that's not good. That's not okay in a country like Canada. We have to deal with those issues. And we also need to make sure that Canada's unions our voices are heard loudly and clearly, and that begins with the government finally finishing the job that they started so long ago, again, making childcare an accessible piece for all families right across this country. And I know you folks were early to sign on, and I'm proud of that. Again, you have a government that leads by example. So many provinces are still outstanding on that file. So we know we have to take a lot of time. It's going to take hard work. It's going to take all of our solidarity. And during this past election, we established as the CLC one of the movement's largest ever mobilization programs. We used text messages, phone calls, emails, good old-fashioned door knocking. My first canvass in this last election was with Labour leaders and Labour folks in St. John's, Newfoundland, and my last one was in Victoria in BC. Together, we mobilized over 3,000 volunteers from all across the labor movement, from all different kinds of unions, big and small, and we reached over 190,000 people. And as I said earlier, the election is over, but our work really is just beginning. And I have to level with you. Our political advocacy relies on dedicated union members like yourselves. And that means we, all of us, have to continue to engage with our members, with the members in your union, with the members in all unions. Because the millions of workers that we all collectively represent across the country are our biggest source of untapped resources. We have to make engaged union members out of dues-paying members, and that's a challenge for all unions. You're not unique, my union isn't unique, but it's something we have to address and face. Because by working together, we actually have tremendous collective power. We have to overcome our differences within the labor movement and work towards those common goals, to stand up for our rights, push our agenda forward, and never, ever let those in power push us backwards. And that includes working hard to continue to elect representatives who put workers and families at the center of their plans. So our collective engagement in the political process is vital for us in achieving our goals in our workplaces and in our communities. And that also encourages our members to get involved and to stand together in solidarity, because what we have in common, let's face it, is so much stronger than the things that divide us, that we get all, balled up about and get frustrated about. We still have to keep our eye on the big picture. So I encourage all of you to learn more about the ongoing CLC campaigns at canadianplan.ca. You'll find easy ways to get involved and get more information about how we plan to push the agenda forward. Please feel free to connect with me and the team members on social media. And, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, I don't know if you folks have heard the news, I'm sure many of you have, but 22,000 CUPE workers in New Brunswick were locked out this morning, are out on strike this morning, I should say. Not locked out, but quite frankly didn't have a choice. They've been hitting the pavement as of early this morning. We are a family in the labor movement. Please show your love by sending them some support on social media, post some stuff about that, check out what they're going through. Having walked a picket line, many of us can relate, right? You have extreme highs and extreme lows when you're on a picket line, and having those messages of support from your union family right across this country is so important. Our movement has extremely lofty ambitions. We can only get this done if we work together. All of our efforts in organizing, engaging, and making ourselves heard, only united together can we build the community of our dreams. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you. Thank you, David and Laurie.